I'm Nelson from the Academic Advising Office. May I welcome all of you to join this workshop. This workshop is an annual event that we want to provide opportunities for advisors to communicate with each other and then learn from the speaker, as well as share our own experience so that we can all do better. And today we are very pleased, we are very honored, it's an honor for us to have Dr. Gary Harvard could agree to become to serve as a speaker for this workshop. Dr. Harvey, I think, is no stranger to many of you. Dr. Harvey has been with the Hong Kong youth families for nearly 2 decades before he moved on to his current role as the principal of the Good Hope School. During his tenure with Hong Kong U, Dr. Harvey was the Associate Dean of the Faculty of Education. He also served as the Faculty Academic Advising Coordinator of the Faculty of Education. Dr. Harvey was an outstanding teacher. He received 2 University Outstanding Teaching Award, an individual award in 2012, and then a team award in 2018. So Dr. Harvey was a very good teacher and also a very good very familiar with the advising environment of the Hong Kong U. And then Dr. Harvey moved on to become the principal of the Good Hope School in 2021. And as I think some of you know, Hong Kong U, the Good Hope School is one of the top band 1 direct subsidy school in Hong Kong, widely recognized as one of the best schools in this city. So we are very honored to have Dr. Harvey, who are very familiar with the secondary school student as well as the university student, and knows a lot about the transition between a secondary student and the Hong Kong to a university studies. So I won't take up further of your time. I will invite Dr. Harvey to start his presentation. Thank you, Dr. Harvey.
Thank you, Nelson, and thank you for that very kind introduction. And it's nice to see some familiar faces and names. It's very nice to be back. To be honest, I was very surprised when Nelson invited me because not being at Hong Kong U and obviously dealing with academic advisees anymore, I thought it was a bit strange. But then I saw the title, Bridging the Gap, and I really do believe that there is a gap. And it needs to be bridged. And I think that's why this session is very important. And those of you who have attended today, you have therefore acknowledged that this is an important part of our role as welcoming and advising new graduates into Hong Kong U. So thank you for joining today. That's half the battle, recognizing that this is an important part to play. So I'm just going to share a screen because I've just wanted to just highlight a few key points as I go through. Okay, Nelson, can you see that? Is that all right? Okay, good. All right, so as I said, there is a gap between secondary and university, and I guess I can see that a little bit clearer now on the other side of the fence. And I would just like to say that what you're doing as an academic advisor is really so important. It's not always visible, and it doesn't always get the same prestige or value as other aspects of our work, whether it be writing or teaching or research, of course. But it is such an important part of what we do in our respective faculties. And a shout out to my wonderful colleagues in the Faculty of Education who I know are here today. Because if you have a happy and a stable group of students that are taking your programs and courses, that makes life much easier for them, but it makes much life easier for the faculty and the university. And at program level, and I know some of you are coordinators and directors, that makes a huge difference too. It does allow students to gain more confidence about their choices. It allows them to break down the barriers to go and speak to different academics and seek advice, which is crucial to their development. But it also, I think, fosters a better relationship between staff and students, particularly in that first year, which is crucial to the students settling in and getting used to the culture of Hong Kong University. I go back to, I think it's 2010, 2011, the first academic advising meetings and lots of documents being tabled. This, I think, was the summary at the time, which really headed most of the documents at that time. And it contains all the main areas where academic advising is valuable. And you can see in here the key words about being a developmental process, that it's not just one meeting or a single year of academic advice, but it's also a process. And again, allowing students to take personal responsibility and guide their decision making. And again, you can see understanding the aims of university education, the culture and ethos of learning. One thing I found as an academic advisor at Hong Kong U is that, you know, we seem to take it for granted that the students come in and they know about Hong Kong U because they've been targeting Hong Kong U for such a long time. But the reality is very different for students. And so helping them to come to terms with what it means to be a Hong Kong U student, I think was really very helpful. And it's something I do now, actually. I get a lot of students who still come and ask me about Hong Kong U as if I'm an expert on every program, and I'm clearly not. But I can guide them towards certain colleagues or certain faculties and teams, and that gives the students confidence, and it allows them then to sort of apply with a little bit more courage and a bit more confidence. So it's good again that bridge can take place on our side as well. So I wanted to start with maybe a few reminders about the current intake. In other words, the students that you're going to receive. And I know some of you would have been interviewing them already, ready for September. The biggest issue is, of course, that the coming cohort that you have had, I would say, from my experience of being back here at Good Hope, this was the first school that I ever taught in Hong Kong, and it's a very special place to me. But the students in the last, the cohort that is leaving us now and coming to you, they have had the hardest time because for much of their secondary school life, they were studying online and they were not in school and they were not operating in English. Us being an EMI school, they weren't having the activities that we take for granted today. So this is something I feel is really important. You've probably seen this already with students coming into the university, maybe a little bit less confident, a little bit less collegial, supportive of each other. I would say that of all the cohorts I've worked with since I've returned to school, this cohort has the weakest sense of belonging to school. And that is because they missed Form 2, Form 3, and those years are the foundation years, really, where we give students so many different activities, where they get to choose their electives in Form 3. They have almost like a buffet of subjects to choose from. That wasn't possible for many of our girls this year, and 3 years ago, because they were stuck at home. So even their DSE choices were made online. They didn't come in, they didn't speak to anyone. And when they did return to school, and if you remember, we had that horrible haphazard 2 forms can come back, 2 forms can stay home. It was ridiculous. But these are the students that suffered the most because we prioritized our senior students at the time and our most junior Form 1 students. And these students were stuck in the middle, which means that they spent more time at home, in their rooms, online, in little echo chambers on social media than actually socializing in a school, in a classroom. And when they did return to school, they were thrown straight into the DSE washing machine. And of course, that means for the last 3 years, they've just been studying and working really hard. I sense that from talking to them. I feel that many of them lack confidence compared to the previous group. One interesting sign is that many of them won't study overseas this year. We've got less than 10 students. The previous year, we had 40 or 50 that applied to go overseas. This year, it's lower than 10. That suggests that's a benefit for Hong Kong because they'll stay here, of course. But it does mean that there's maybe less confidence in applying to go overseas as well. So that's my warning, if you like, that they will need a little bit more time. Their sense of identity as a student, they haven't had the same experiences as other students have had. So typically when we ask students to talk about their school life in the opening lessons, this group, most of their school life would have been dominated by COVID and by restrictions, and then by having to suddenly get used to DSE and prepare. So I do feel sorry for them, I really do. And I think this is something that I hope they can overcome at university and take all the opportunities that are there. But I'm guessing it may not be so easy for some of them because they haven't had that culture or that apprenticeship, if you like, for trying new things. So what are our students worried about? Now, I can only speak for my school, but as Nelson said, we're a Band 1 EMI school. We're very typically, our students will go to Hong Kong U and that other place up in Sha Tin. But they'll choose between the two of us, and we have a healthy number that go to UST for business courses. But I would guess most of our students are fairly typical. And when I've spoken to other principals, for example, they've also reinforced that point about the sense of belonging, that they don't feel so close to the school as previous cohorts or our current students again. So this is what I've asked students. I've spoken to them. They've been coming back in for graduation ceremonies and photos. And I also spoke to their careers masters as well. And some of them are feelings that I have. So an obvious thing is that when students graduate from Form 6, they join university, they no longer have a home base. And what I mean by a home base is they no longer have a classroom with a class teacher. Now, in our school, they have the same class teacher for 3 years in a perfect world if that teacher hasn't left or changed. So that is a big culture to suddenly culture change to come to university and not having a class teacher to report to or a foster parent or having anybody chasing after them for homework or deadlines. And I remember that in the faculty when advisees would come to see me and say, nobody's asked me for homework. Nobody chases me. You know, it's something they have to do themselves. And in many schools where students have been well looked after by teachers who care very much about them, you know, that's suddenly taken away. So it is worth reminding them that this is very different at university, that there are expectations, there are deadlines. We do want homework to be done, but the students need to take more responsibility for that. Some will be better than others, I've got no doubt. Planning their weeks and balancing studies. I always remember asking students if they were in a hall of residence or if they were living at home. And the longer I was at Hong Kong U, the more I realized if they were at home, they seemed to have a better balance of how to judge activities alongside their academic responsibilities. Those in halls had a fantastic time, but they didn't seem to work at the same level as others. Not all of them, it's a sweeping comment, but we know that most of the students who struggled tended to have many, many other commitments or seemed to forget that they were actually a student in a faculty. So again, working out and preparing them for that sense of duty and responsibility, whether it be living in a hall or at home, and that's important. When they get to university, they're going to have far less communication. At school, we communicate with their parents all the time. We communicate with them. They get bombarded by messages and emails. Suddenly at university, those messages change. They don't have the same personal side. And so I did find as an academic advisor, some students miss that very personal touch of a class teacher. It's interesting to me that in the first 2 or 3 months of every year, like September to November, we get a lot of people, graduates, revisiting us. And it's because they want to see their class teacher again, or they want to touch base with their subject teachers. And they often say that they miss those people. And I think that tells you, again, when they get to university, there isn't that sense of familiarity. They don't feel so close to staff. And that's natural. It's a different environment. But it does tell you that settling in is harder for them. And the other thing relating to our teachers, of course, and our teaching is that they have not taken Common Core or foundation courses in their subjects. And so very often when they come into university, they don't even know what that is. And we take it for granted. So that orientation period is really important in helping them to understand why we have Common Core, why there are foundation courses in some subjects, and allowing them to see that as part of their academic journey and not as sort of an imposition or something which is just added on to them. So I do remember a lot of students coming in and asking, what's the Common Core? Which should I take? There's so many choices. This person tells me this one's difficult, this one's easy. That was where I gave a lot of advice on Common Core. And so it is good to talk to colleagues and past students who have gone through those courses, look at the amazing menu that they have, but also asking students to really push themselves out of their comfort zone. That's always my message to the students, regardless of the time of the year or regardless of the cohort. Leave your comfort zone, take something new, take something fresh, learn something new, because that's the beauty of the Common Core and the university diversity that's in the curriculum. This one always came up, and it's still coming up now, actually, even before they've joined you. And of course, they're very worried about getting to Hong Kong U. They're already worried whether they can take a course that they've heard is really important. And I know that that depends a lot on the offering of the course, the quota for the students, the timing of the course, because some courses may run in the second semester or even the second year. So having that knowledge, I think, is important to help the students to understand that maybe it's okay if they don't get every course they want in the first term, and that there is a track for them to follow. That's important. I mentioned hall life. I know some of you will know the halls better than I did at the time, but it's good to, again, remind them of that balance and to make sure that they're spending equal time and attending to their academic studies and attending classes. One thing is that I noticed this when I was at university, particularly when you start grading assignments at the first term. The APA system means nothing to them. And they don't use Turnitin. And here in schools, we know that they're using ChatGPT for essays and for work, and the same as they will be at university, of course. But that background is really important. And I know some of them fear academic writing because it's not something that we do. In my school, for some of our courses like literature and history, we have brought in academics to help them with the nuance of writing a discursive essay because we think that's so important in those subjects. But for the majority of students, that's unnecessary for what they have to do for DSE English, for example, or other subjects. So that's an area where they will have to adjust very quickly, the demands of academic writing and the APA system. So these are little things that you might want to bring into your first meetings with them. All right, just to sort of give them a bit of support. And if there's I always used to send them the link to the APA system just so they'd be a reminder, because they would always get upset if you downgraded them at Christmas and they didn't know why, and they hadn't cited something, or they'd cited too many things or incorrectly. It's something which majority of our students at university will have to come to terms with quite quickly. I've also mentioned their identity. They've spent so much time aiming at Hong Kong U that when they get there, the question is, now what? And as an academic staff in Hong Kong U, we don't see that maybe because they become our students. So we assume that everything's fine. And I was just telling Nelson before we started, I still remember a student that I had going back a few years, but he was an amazing student. He became chairman of EDSOC. He was really active. And then in the second year, he just went into a downward spiral. And I had a long chat with him, and he came and said that basically he'd spent his whole life, his whole family had been pushing him to get to Hong Kong U. That was his life goal. And once he was at Hong Kong U, he didn't know what to do anymore. The goal had gone, and nobody was pushing him. He had no teachers, no principals, no parents, all pushing him. He was basically left to work out what his life was going to be about. I don't think he would be the only one. I think there will be many others whose identity has been a student to get the highest grades possible to get to Hong Kong U. Then they have to come back with a new identity and create themselves. Some are better than others. But I think that's a really big issue that's under the surface and a little bit invisible for us as academic advisors. But those are things that I think we need to pay attention to. And maybe other colleagues have things to share on that. And the other thing is that students are nervous about professors and academic staff. I had a chat a couple of weeks ago with one of our graduates, one of our girls, who said that she was interviewed recently by one of the associate deans, and she was so scared. This is in a different university, but she was so scared because this person was so high up and big name in the faculty. That was just an interview to get into university. So again, the reputation of Hong Kong U is very, very, very strong amongst the students. And that means that there's a little bit starstruck when they first arrive. And so again, making them feel at home, making them feel part of the faculty, lowering that aphatic filter, allowing them to feel, a sense of belonging, I think is really important. Going the extra step to make them welcome. I think it's really very, very important at university level. That way we see the best out of the students as well, because they're contributing then to university life. I thought if it was okay, I'd share a little bit about how I work with my advisees. Now, this is not a perfect roadmap for any of you. It was just how I developed my practice over about 8 years, and I must admit I did change it around. So at the beginning, I would ask students to come and see me in my office individually. And then it took me a while to realize that some of them didn't like to do that. Again, it's the power mechanic, it's the hierarchy idea that they're coming to an academic's office and they're sitting there and I'm the one telling them where to come to at what time. And I learned from talking to other colleagues that they had more open meetings and they had group meetings at the beginning. So again, it really depends on you as a person and how you feel and advice that, but try different methods. Once I switched to the initial meeting being a group meeting, it was much, much easier and a lot more social. And you're also allowing them to meet each other too, because it doesn't follow that every student you meet is naturally friends with another advisee that you have. So bringing them together creates another layer of support and gives them an intellectual resource to draw on. So I would write them a message. Once I knew who my advisees were, I would send them an email individually and just welcome them and wish them well and introduce myself. I wouldn't do anything much more than that. I would just send that out to them and wish them well. This would probably be late August, early September, once all the course lists are decided. And then, as I said, through trial and error, I started to arrange group meetings. And this would very often be in a neutral location. So Menghua had a coffee shop at the bottom. I would meet them in there sometimes. I know some colleagues would meet them in Starbucks and turn that into their office and just a little bit more informal. Sometimes the common room, sometimes the union buildings, but just somewhere where they can sit together and have a more I guess more collegial feeling rather than being in an office surrounded by academic books and etc. That can come later, but I think that initial step was important. So I had something neutral. Even the library, it's possible to book a little room there and do something differently there. I would also send them an email once a month or so, particularly in that first semester, just to let them know that I was still there, just to sort of, if anything had happened in the university or if there was something going on, just to sort of remind them about certain things. Usually around that time, they start to get their assignment documents and they start to build up what they need to do in the course. But like I said, they're not being chased for homework. And very often the assignments are not due until the end of the program in November, December. And then they all come in a crazy fast time. That's usually when many students have their mini breakdowns because they can't cope with 4, 5, 6 assignments in a week because they haven't done anything up until that point. So reminding them to make sure they have the resources. Do they know what they need to do for the assignments? Have they checked? In those days, go to the library and check that the books are available. Because from my experience, every time they went to the library in November, the books were taken out that they needed, that were on the reading lists. So can they do that early? Can they get hold of academic papers? Do they know how to do this rather than rushing in November, December? But it was also just a way of just keeping communication. I didn't necessarily expect a reply, but it was just a way of saying, I'm still here, by the way. And then I would send a reminder in November about those assignment days. So this is where you're getting up closer to the exams. Many students will have exams in November, December time. And this was a sort of a good luck message, reminder message. And again, just asking them to get in touch if they had any problems. And that's usually when some of them might reach out. So again, it's just making them know that you're available if they need it. And then asking for another formal meeting maybe, but I would usually have the second meeting after we saw their grades and their results. And then you've got something to work on and talk through. They've done their first set of assignments. You can ask them about that. They've gone through Christmas. Usually it's a long Christmas break. What did they do? So January was a good time to meet up again for the second or third meeting, and particularly for an individual one. Checking their academic results is really important. I don't know if the system has changed in any way, but many faculties, if students their GPA was dropping below a certain level, they were flagged. And that meant that we could then follow up and get in touch. But inevitably, the students who seemed to be doing the worst weren't always the ones you could reach easily. And that's an ongoing problem, as I'll talk about in a minute. Those challenges are still there, I'm sure. And then I would follow a similar strategy in the second term. But usually by then, you've got a relationship with them and you know who the more tardy ones are, the ones who are always late, and you know the ones who are very keen to have meetings. And inevitably, you end up with 3 or 4, 5 meetings with one student and just 1 or 2 meetings with others. Doesn't matter. Some only need 1 or 2, some need more. But it really did help, and it just allowed them to be in touch. In the second year, there isn't that necessity anymore, but I still met them. If I still sent them a message and asked if they wanted to get in touch, then they could. And some of them would pop by and say hi, and then you see them on the courses and in the corridors. So again, it's there as an opportunity for the students if they need advice or help. So the inevitable challenges, and I mentioned this, students don't reply to emails. I'm a dinosaur, okay? I use email. I know other colleagues may use IG, Facebook, other platforms, etc. Whatever works, whatever works. It's absolutely fine. But I think you've got to be comfortable with that. And I made that very clear in my opening introduction. I said, if you want me, I'm only available on email. Because I used to have students saying, "Huh, are you available on this and this and this?" No, I'm only on email. Because I frankly don't have the time to go through everything else, and it's centralized, and I don't think it's too difficult to send a message. But I remember when we used to send emails out, students didn't read them. And that's probably still a problem in faculty. So, what works for them? And that's once you do get to meet them, you can ask them, what's your preferred method? Is it WhatsApp? Is it something else? There's different ways to do it, but they do need to read emails because that's how the university communicates with them. So again, if you take that away from them, you're taking away that responsibility that I believe they should have for checking for themselves. Because it's the same when they go into work life, there's still going to be emails that they need to read and follow. And then sometimes students wouldn't attend meetings. And that's when you have to be persistent, I think. If you've had a long day and then you see you've got an academic advisee coming to see you at 4:30, 5:15, and they don't show, there's a sense of relief. Okay, good. I can go home and do something. But actually then the next thing you do is you write to them and just simply say you missed the meeting because you don't know what's going on. And they may think that you don't care so much about the meeting, so it doesn't matter too much. You've got to show that you care and it is important. And again, they have that responsibility. So I would always send another message and follow up. Of course, students will ask questions that we can't always answer. Usually about course selections, about particular teachers that they wanted to help them with a dissertation or an assignment or work. Exchange requirements became a very, very big issue for most students. And frankly, I became better at answering those questions because those questions come up every year, but the policies change too. And so that's important that we don't just give the same message, we go and check it. I would always make a note of it, and then I contact the program head or program coordinator or the admin office. Somebody would have the answer. But I would say to the students, you need to give me a couple of days and I'll get the answer for you, or put them in the direction of somebody who would know. But one of the good things I enjoyed about being an academic advisor was the fact that I did learn more about other faculties. I learned more about my own faculty because of issues that they were facing. That's never a bad thing as an academic member of staff, that we know more about the programs and what the students are required to do. As I said, students who fall below the required academic benchmark. So sometimes they would turn up in disciplinary committees, or they would turn up in appeals. And I think, again, our role as advisors is to have some information on them. So if we can show that we've sent multiple messages, they've never replied, that puts the onus on the student. But if the student has asked for support and asked for help, and we haven't always been there to give it, then you see there's a different story. So I think again, it's being open and fair to the students and giving them that opportunity to reach out. That's why that first semester is so important. Invariably, the students' grades get better as they get used to the university life and what's required of them from teachers and from courses. But some of them do struggle throughout, and it's worth finding out the reasons why. So academic advisors are one way, if you like, of leveling for that. All we need is for students to communicate to us or share with us, and we can work on that. And then, of course, the allocation of our research time to advisees and follow-up. I know that, some of you may be thinking this is asking a lot. In the grand scheme of things, I didn't find it to be a huge amount of time invested. It was a simple email, and then that email becomes a template. And it was just a reminder on my calendar, right? Send another message, check up, and then keeping a file with their emails in so that I could know who sent what and when, and just being organized in that way. It was a few minutes each that responsibility came around. And when students come to see me, I enjoyed that because, again, that was a chance to communicate with students who are taking our programs and courses. That was important to me as a teacher too. So I never saw it as an imposition. I never saw it as being a challenge, but I was aware that some faculties, some colleagues had multiple advisees. I fully understand then it becomes harder. I'm hoping it's a little bit easier now with the huge numbers that some faculties have. But again, some colleagues had ways of dealing with that as well. So if you do feel that you're struggling, my advice would be to talk to other advisors in the faculty and get advice from the academic advising coordinator, because they attend meetings a lot and they get to hear different practices, both good and maybe not so good. And obviously talk to Nelson as well. So you get different ways of balancing that time. But it is a university requirement. And I think taking it seriously means we get more out of it that way. And as I said right at the beginning, that way students navigate through university life very well. That looks good on us. They do brilliantly at the end. And I think long term, it always will have more benefits than negative sides. So there's my email. Okay, if anybody wants to write to me to complain about today or to ask questions, then please do. But I know there's going to be a Q&A as well, Nelson, all right? So I'll pass back to you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Harvey. Before we start the Q&A sections, I will take you a few minutes. I'll just take about a few minutes to introduce some tools, advising tools that I think will be helpful to advisors. For those of you who would like to ask questions, you can just you can either raise up your hand when we start the Q&A session, or you can just type your question in the chat box, and then we'll invite Dr. Harvey to answer them at the during the Q&A sections. Now, before that, as I mentioned, I have a very short presentation about the tools that we have to help advisors to do their work. Now, first of all, as Dr. Harvey mentioned, in the system, in the SIS advising system, we do have an advisee list for the advisors to know who are your advisees. And then because this list actually lists out all advisees, and so we have a column on the right hand side. You see I have a red circle circling them to indicate which one is a new advisees. So those are the students that may need a little bit more of your attention, and so maybe you need to talk to them or reach out to them more. And then when you click on the name of the student, it will direct you to a summary of their background. And so you can read from this summary their background, for example, whether they're underage, because if they're under 18 years of age, you will have underage indicated there. And then you also know his or her public examination result. So when he or she come to you and say that, okay, I want to, I don't know, do certain courses or have an academic plan, and then you know how good, or maybe they are not as good as they think they are, and then you may then give some proper advice to them. Of course, you also know their course enrollment, as Dr. Harvey just mentioned, when you meet with them in late August or early September, by that time they have already done their course registration. So you can have a look at their course enrollment to see whether it's in order or not. And then we have some tools here. Now, first of all, we have a planning sheet. It's on our website. It's just a template, a very simple template for students to write out their plan. For those students who are in a program with majors and minors, of course, it will be easy for them to give you some idea about what major or minors they intend to do. For those professional curriculum, education, engineering, which have little room for major and minor, or they may also indicate to you whether they wish to, for example, go for exchange, or go for a join an internship, or learn a second language, etc. And then if they really do want to do that, when will they do that? And something like that. So maybe you can invite your advisees to bring to the meeting a plan, a preliminary plan, so that it will be easier for you to start this kind of discussion with your advisees. We have a roadmap in our website because we realize that some students, when they arrive to OnConU, they have no idea what university life is about. And so it's just a roadmap in our webpage listing out the issues that we think they may wish to consider during different stage of their university life. In year one, maybe you may want to consider these matters, and then in your year two, in your year three, in your year four, what matters you may need to consider. And so just give them some preliminary idea about what they are going to face in different stages of the university studies. We have a degree audit tools. It's actually more for a senior year student to track their study progress. But why I mention it here is because it also has another tools here called the what if report. It's a tools built in the degree audit software that it allows students to make hypothetical situation. So when a year-one student come here and say that, okay, I intend to do a second major and then I intend to do a minor in certain subjects, and then he can just key in those hypothetical situations and then click a few buttons, and then the report will show out what will be the situation, what are the requirements, how your current enrollment fit in those hypothetical situations, so that it will be easier for you to discuss with students different scenarios about what they intend to do. And then, of course, we have the major minor list in our webpage, so that the student knows what are the choices open to them. We have this is another thing. This is a database of senior year students who volunteer to share their experience about their major and minors with students. So, for example, a student come to you, he's an education student, and then he say that, okay, I want to know more about sociology. And then you are not familiar with a subject outside your faculty, and also the student advisors from your faculty may not be in a position to help them because they probably may not have contact with those subjects. And so the student can actually try to reach out to those student lists in this database about the subjects they're interested in, and then they can get connect with their peers and then learn more about ask questions that they want to know about their subjects. And finally, we have a GPA calculator, which surprisingly, when we designed these tools a few years back ago, we didn't think that it's so popular, but actually it's the most popular advising tools we have, because of course it helps some students, especially those who are not from the science or engineering, or from the arts or social science, they may not be that good at maths and they know how to calculate GPA. Some students actually don't have an idea what GPA is. And also this feature also have a tools that helps them to set the GPA target. For example, when they, get a GPA of, 2.5 in the first semester, and then some students come here and say, okay, if I want to lift it up to 3.0, but they don't know how. They don't know what level they need to do in the subsequent semester in order to lift up the GPA to 3.0 so that they can get a second class honor or something like that. And so these tools actually just key in some data, some figures, and then click a few buttons, and then they will know what are the GPA goals that they need to do in subsequent semester in order to fulfill his or her GPA goal. So it's a tools for new students, I think. And we have other resources as well. I don't go into details on that. You can just go to our website. And by the way, we also have a guidebook for advisors, which lists out the things I've just mentioned, as well as other resources as well. And then we have a new version that we're updating it, and then we will release a new version in August, and we hope it will help advisors work. Let's end here, and then let me thank Dr. Harvey again for your very valuable comment, input, and thank you for joining us. And also thank you for all the participants for joining the workshop. We hope again, as I mentioned, we hope by this workshop we can build up a channel, a platform for you to interact with each other. So if you have some other things that you want to share, things like, just free to reach out to our office, and then we're very happy to share. To serve as a channel for each of us to share, to learn from each other. Okay, thank you very much and have a nice day.